All right, let's have a look at those Aurora numbers today. So like my other videos, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the most current month we have in the Toronto Real Estate Board stats, which is November 2021. We'll compare that with what happened a year ago in Aurora in November 2020, and then we'll have a look at October 2021 as well, forgive my typo, just to give you a little bit of contrast. So we're going to start with the numbers. So we had 114 new listings come on the market in Aurora, represented by the N, and that is across all home types, condos, semis, towns, links, absolutely everything, and that was in November 2020. The S is sales through the month. We had 102 sales, and active listings essentially are what carry over into the next month. Not essentially, they do. So they're what didn't sell, homes that have been on the market maybe for a month or two, homes that have been listed near the end of the month, however that may work out, and they fall into the next month. If we look at October 2021, so we had 130 listings come on the market. We had 112 sales and 77 active listings. And what I want to point out here is that, these numbers, so we had, compared to year over year, we had more on the market. Sales actually weren't too far off. But look at the active inventory. The active inventory literally was cut in half. And so just a lot less listings for people to look at. November 2021, we had 104 new listings come on the market, 86 sales. So we had a reduction in sales. We had a pretty big reduction in the amount of inventory that came out, and active listings actually remained fairly close. If we're looking at money, $1,120,000 was the average sale price across all home types in Aurora in November 2020. That climbed to $1,415,000 in October 2021, currently trending at $1,437,000. So if you remember a couple months back in my videos where we did see the jump where it went from $1,001,000 and change and it jumped to 1.4 in about a 30-day period, well, it has maintained that. Sales to new listings ratio, also known as the absorption rate, tells us that out of the homes coming on the market each month, what is the percentage that are actually selling? Now, it is calculated by taking the sales divided by the new listings that come on the market. So it directly connects to what's selling and what's coming out on the market. It doesn't have anything to do with the active listings. So if we look at November 2020, we had 89.5% of the houses that came on the market sold across all home types in Aurora. That 86.2% in October 21 and currently trending at 82.7. So a slight reduction in the absorption rate, which, it's slowed down, but would I say it's a slow market? No. So if you want to talk about what's a buyer's market, what's a seller's market, between 0 and 50% would be considered a buyer's market. So there is more supply than there is demand. And when you're between 50% and 60% on the absorption rate, that's what we would consider a balanced market. So there is enough supply to meet the demand. And then when you start getting over 60%, there is not enough supply to meet the buyer demand. And that has been basically all of 2021. So the next stat that I really like here is the months of inventory remaining. And it tells us that if no other homes came on the market after today at the current rate of buying or the current rate of consumption, how long would it take to deplete the inventory? So now when you're talking about months of inventory remaining, it is calculated by the active listings divided by the sales. So it speaks directly to the active listings, the carryover inventory, what didn't sell, right? So 1.4 months of inventory in November 2020, 0.7, so dropped in half in October 21, and it's actually climbed up a little bit in November 21 to 0.8. So still not 1 month of inventory, but it did climb a little bit. So again, the market has slowed, but by no means would I say it's a slow market. And you can see that through the numbers, right? You had less listings come out, but sales also reduced, and you had the active listings reduce a little bit. So comparative to the number of sales, it's popped up the inventory levels a little bit. Sale price to list price ratio, 100% of asking is what we were getting on average in November 2020, 107.4 in October, currently trending at 106.7. So now I always say this number's a little bit relative because, you have to keep in mind there are some houses that are drastically underpriced to where they would be valued on the market and what they end up selling for. In other cases, it could be a couple weeks of not a ton of activity on those houses. So instead of getting 5 or 10 offers on offer night or in a multiple offer scenario, maybe they're only getting 2 or 3 or 5, right? So This number is always, like I say, you got to always take it with a grain of salt. Days on market to get a home sold a year ago, 22, 11 in October, currently trending at 15. So, in a market like this, and if you've been watching my videos, I would leave you with this. Generally, when you see, we're in an absorption rate of over 80%, that's a busy market. We have less than a month of inventory. We're getting decently over asking price, but the days on the market counter is going up. Why is that? Usually it would be the opposite. So what I would offer you is that where we see buyers work, typically in markets like this, when you have less inventory coming on the market, there's not as much for buyers to look at, right? So the new listings are down by 26 houses, which when there's only 100 coming out, it makes a big dent, right? And so I would suggest to you that what we're seeing is buyers circle back to this active inventory. And so the reason it pulls the number up is because maybe those houses have been on the market for 30 days or 45 days. So of course that's going to bring up the overall number. I mean, if we look at the actual, if you look around in your neighborhood, you see, I hear people all the time, man, that sign went up and I had a sold sign on it in 3 days, right? And yes, that does absolutely happen, but that's not always necessarily reflected in the numbers because we do have some of the older listings as they get sold, and that drags the number up. So I hope you found this information helpful. If you have any questions on how any of this information would pertain to your specific home type in Aurora, I would love to connect with you, and I wish you and your family happy holidays.